Number 3, the question is from Leslie Johnson. Says, hi, Pastor Mike. Can you please explain how we should properly interpret Matthew 24, verses 45 through 47? I know JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses, think it's referring to their governing body, but I'd like your opinion. Thanks. Okay. Matthew 24. We're going to look at it together. This is the governing body verse. This is probably the faithful servant verse. Let me take us there just a second. Matthew 24, 45 through 47. I'll put it on your screen as well, everybody. Who then is the faithful and sensible slave? This is the NASB version, New American Standard. Who then is the faithful and sensible slave? Let's remember this phrase. Whom his master put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time. Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. The NASB is more like a literal translation, right? Leans more that way. So you're going to find like this phrase, faithful and sensible slave, which is hard to translate into our modern vernacular, because we hear slave and we have a modern understanding of that word that is actually different than it is in ancient times. But the idea is that Jesus is talking about someone who's a servant, right? And the master obviously represents God. In this passage, it obviously represents God, or Jesus, who is God, coming and rewarding that servant after some time period. And what is he? He's faithful. He's faithful to the master, to God, and he's sensible, meaning he's making good and wise choices. That just like the servant has tasks, they have authorities, they have things like that. And blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. He will be in charge of all his possessions. He'll be elevated up and he'll be given even more authority. And if he's evil, he'll be punished. Okay. Now the Jehovah's Witness organization teaches that this is them. That the faithful, and they use the term faithful and discreet slave, but sensible is what we have in ASB. And they teach that the organization is them, that the slave is an organization and the organization is them. Now, early on, from what I've read in JW literature, early on, it was the Jehovah's Witnesses all together. Then it was the organization sort of more exclusively. And now the faithful and discreet slave, it has shrunk down to focus more on these specific leaders, the elders, what's called the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They are the faithful and discreet slave, or the faithful and sensible slave. There's a few problems with this. One is that Jesus is just offering a general principle, as he does many times in his parables and in his discussions about the second coming. He's like, hey, I'm going to leave, I'm going to depart, and you Christians, plural, you are being given responsibilities. And this would refer, if you're in charge of a household to give them their proper food and order, this would probably refer to genuinely servants in the church, people who are blessing and serving others. So anybody who serves in that teaching leadership position in the church. So there, I would agree that there's I wouldn't call it a governing body. That's the problem. That's a problem. It's not one body. It's rather each person has an opportunity to be this faithful and sensible servant for Christ. One of the problems with this, though, is the Jehovah's Witness organization uses this to claim that it's almost like a prophecy, that Jesus is telling them, hey, there's going to be this organization that we're going to call the faithful and sensible slave or discreet slave, and they're going to be the ones you can trust. So the question is, who is the faithful and sensible or faithful and discreet slave? Who is this one? And then the JWs are like, it's us. It's our organization. It's our governing body. They're the faithful ones. Jesus is not making a prophecy. He's offering a warning, not a prophecy. There's no promise that there will be some specific faithful and sensible slave. Instead, he's like, will you be this or will you not? Right? If you are this, right, you're going to have this blessing from him, right? But verse 48, as you read on, but if that evil slave says in his heart, my master's not coming for a long time, begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with the drunkards. I mean, look into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. This describes their leadership in the past. Yes, drunken. I mean, I know this sounds crazy if you're JW, but look into your own history. The drunkenness and the abuse of the people who are serving the organization. Absolutely, this is the case. Let's look at the deaths from blood transfusions and the abuses from the leaders and stuff. If they find that, the master of that slave will come in a day when he does not expect him, and an hour in which he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The bottom line is this. Jesus is offering basically a wake-up call to all those who are serving others in the name of Christ. So it does apply to leadership. But it is not a promise about some special organization you have to find and then you can trust them. Rather, it's kind of a threat to whoever serves in Christ's name, that they better be a faithful, which the JW organization is not faithful to Christ because they've reinvented Jesus and they've a false gospel. And they're not serving the people that follow them because they've had many abuses to them. They use them as props to prop themselves up. So that would be my answer to that. It doesn't fit the context at all. It's treated as a prophecy when it's really more like a warning. It applies to anyone who serves others in the name of Christ, and they act like it applies specially to some special elite chosen organization.